Okay, so we are skipping chapter 11 and we're going to go into chapter 12. We should be able to get through most of chapter 12 before the end of the school year. So this first one is statistical questions. And so again, I would get your notes and I would label it. Let me turn my pencil on. Okay. And I would label 12.1 recognize statistical questions. Okay, and you have a couple vocab words here that you really should copy down. All right, so the first one is, if you measure the heights of your classmates, you're collecting data. A set of data is a set of information collected about people or things. Okay, so data. What is data? This is what you should write. Set of information collected about people or things. Now, a question that asks about a set of data that can vary is called a statistical question. So, a statistical question. What is it? You should write this as your definition. A question that asks about a set of data that can vary. And so that's what you should write for your definition for statistical question. Now, here's some examples. What are the heights of my classmates on July 1st? This is a statistical question because you are asking about a group and not everybody's going to be the same height. So the heights are going to vary. It's really important, that word right there, varies in a group of people. What is Sasha's height on July 1st? Is not a statistical question because you are only asking about one person. There's no big group of varying heights. It's just one person. So it makes it not a statistical question. Okay, so let's look at this, this first one. The New England Aquarium in Boston I can't read apparently now, in Boston is a home to over 80 penguins. Which of the following is a statistical question a biologist could ask about the penguins? Explain your reasoning. All right, so let's look at A and B. So A says, how much does the penguin named Pip weigh this morning? Whereas, how much does a penguin named Pip weigh each morning on 30 different days? So it's basically which one's a statistical question, which one isn't, because one is and one isn't. Now, the problem with A is it says, how much does the penguin named Pip weigh this morning? It's only asking for one morning, so there's just one piece of data, that's it. Whereas for B, they want to know for 30 different days. So guarantee he's not going to weigh the same every day. Chances are it's going to change slightly. Okay, so if we just kind of go through this real quick, it says identify the statistical question. Even though we already know, B is your statistical question. Okay, so question A asks for Pip's weight at one time. So it blank asks about a set of data that varies. So it doesn't ask about a set of data that varies because it's just asking for one time. So question A is not a statistical question. Whereas question B asks for Pip's weight at 30 different times, and it is likely that Pip's weight will vary during this period. So question B asks about a set of data that can vary, so it is a statistical question because it's asking, you're looking at 30 different measurements. You're looking at 30 different days, weights. So you're looking at 30 different days, so therefore it's a statistical question as opposed to A, it's just one day. That's it. All right, so let's look at this bottom one right here. Another biologist asks how old the penguin named Royal Pudding is. Is this a statistical question? Explain your reasoning. They're asking you about one penguin, that's it. So you only have one piece of data, so this would no. It is not a statistical question because it's only asking about one penguin. Okay, so maybe if they'd asked you, you know, there's a group of penguins and you have all their ages, you know, how old is the oldest penguin? How old is the youngest penguin? Because then you're having to actually look at data. Here, it's one penguin, this is his age at this time, there's no other data. Okay, so here's another little brief description about a statistical question. A statistical question can ask about an entire set of data that can vary or a value that describes that set of data. For example, what is the height of the tallest person in my class? So you're looking at everybody's height and then you're going to pick out the tallest. This is a statistical question because it will tell you the greatest value in a set of data that can vary. It's kind of like that penguin one I just said, you know, who out of the group of penguins, how old is the oldest or how old is the youngest? You will learn other ways to describe a set of data later in this chapter. All right, so here's another one. Another example. Bongos are a kind of antelope that live in Central Africa. Bongos are unusual because both male and females have horns. Write 2 statistical questions a biologist could ask about a group of bongos. What is the, you could say, longest in inches of the horns on the bongo that has the longest horns in the group? So actually, let me rephrase that. So I'm not using the same word over and over. What is the length in inches of the horns on the bongo that has the longest horns in the group? You could also switch it and say, what is the length in inches of the horns on the bongo that has the shortest horns in the group? Okay, different bongos will have different horn lengths. This question asks about a value in a set of data that will vary. So it is a statistical question because you're going to be looking at a lot of numbers and you're going to be picking out the one that has the longest. Okay, here's another one. What is the weight of the, let's say, smallest bongo in the group? Or you could say, what is the weight of the largest bongo in the group? So either one could be a possible answer. Different bongos will have different weights because they're not all going to weigh the same. So this question asks about a value in a set of data that will vary. So it is a statistical question. Let's keep going. All right, so now this one, I just have to write down some examples of statistical questions for these. A researcher knows the amount of electricity used in 20 different homes on a Monday. So you got 20 different homes, so you could say how much oops, I turned on my eraser. How much electricity did the house that used the most electricity use? Or you could say, you could change one of the words. How much electricity did the house that used the, see this right here? You could change this to least. So you could say, how much electricity did the house that used the least amount of electricity use? So just so you can see that you can kind of change it up. Okay, here's another one. A museum director records the number of students in each tour group that visits the museum during 1 week. Okay, so kind of similar to A. I could say how many students are in the largest tour group. Okay, or like I said, you could change up this and you could change it to smallest tour group. Okay, so you're looking at all the tour groups, and then you're looking at a lot of data, and then you're able to give an amount after you look at the data. Okay, so here's some more examples, but here you have to identify. So only one of them is a statistical question. So like A, what was the low temperature in Chicago each day in March? Okay, that right there tells me that's a statistical question because it's asking. So you got 31 days here. So you're going to be looking at 31 days. Whereas B, what was the low temperature in Chicago on March 7th? So this is only 1 day. All right, so question A asks for the low temperature at 31 times, and it is likely the temperature will vary. Question B asks for the low temperature at 1 time. Question A is your statistical question because you're having to look at 31 days worth of data as opposed to just 1 day. Okay, 2, how long did it take you to get to school this morning? So this morning, so this is 1 day. Whereas opposed, how long did it take you to get to school each morning this week? So that would be 5 days. So which one is a statistical question? B is a statistical question because it's asking, so basically just take C right here, which, no, sorry, not that. Right here, what this says here, you're pretty much going to copy that kind of format. So how long did it take you to get to school each morning this week? So B, and then you would say because it's asking you to look at look at 5 days of data that will likely vary. All right, so now we have to write a statistical question for the following situation. A student recorded the number of pets in the household of 56 graders. Okay, so you could ask, what could we ask? We could ask how many households had, pick an animal like cats. How many households had cats? Or how many households had a cat as a pet? So you're going to look at all the data. Not everybody's going to have a cat, so some may have only dogs, some may have cats. Yeah, so that could be a possible statistical question. You could ask how many households have 1 or more dogs, could be another question. Okay, let's look at some more examples. Okay, identify the statistical question. Get a little there. How many gold medals has Finland won at each of the last 10 Winter Olympics? Okay, so you're looking at multiple Olympic Games. Whereas, how many gold medals did Finland win at the 2008? You're only looking at 1. So A, and then you would say because you are looking at 10 different times. To 10 different so the data will vary. Okay, 5, write a statistical question. So it says a wildlife biologist measured the length of time that 17 grizzly bears hibernated. So you could say, what was the longest time a grizzly bear hibernated? Now you could take and change this. What was the shortest? You could change that to shortest. Okay, 6. A doctor recorded the birth weights of 48 babies. All right, so think heaviest, lightest, or lowest, highest. So you could say, what was the lightest weight recorded? Okay, or instead of saying lightest, you could say heaviest weight recorded. Okay, let's look at some more. And so we're going to be looking at this data here, the roller coasters. And it says, give a statistical question that you could ask about the data in the table. So you're looking at 4 different roller coasters. And so therefore, you're looking at different speed amounts, different height requirements. Sorry, not height requirements. I just saw height and automatically I started thinking how tall you have to be in order to ride it. But no, it's not talking about that. Okay, so you could say something like, which roller coaster reaches the greatest height? Or which roller coaster reaches the greatest speed? So you could say, which roller coaster reaches the greatest speed? Or you could say, which roller coaster reaches the highest height, or the greatest height? Now we have to create a statistical question based off of, so you see this that I wrote right here could actually be written right here. So it says, what statistical question would have the answer 92 miles per hour? That would be, which roller coaster actually, no, let me rephrase that. So it's going to be similar but not identical. So what is the greatest speed a roller coaster can reach? So the one I wrote for 7, you'd actually have to give the name of the roller coaster, whereas 8, you're giving the speed of the roller coaster. Okay, so let's look at 9. We're almost done. Here's just one more slide after this. A video game company will make a new game. The manager must choose between a role-playing game and an action game. He asks his sales staff which of the last 10 released games sold the most copies. Explain why this is a statistical question. Well, think about it. Is he only asking about one game? No, he's asking about the last 10 games released. So the question asks about 10 different games, and the number of copies sold will vary. will vary. Okay, last one. It's a yes or no. Is it a statistical question or not? How many minutes did it take Ethan to complete his homework last night? Okay, first, is it asking you about multiple nights? No, it's just one night. Therefore, no, it is not a statistical question. How many minutes did it take Madison to complete her homework each night this week? Okay, this one's asking you about 1 week, so that's at least 5 days of homework. So this one, yes. How many more minutes did Andrew spend on homework on Tuesday than on Thursday? Okay, so now think about it. Is it only asking you about 1 day? No, it's asking you about Tuesday, and then it's asking you about Thursday. And chances are he didn't spend the same amount of time each day. So it's going to vary. So then this one is a yes. And then the last one, what was the longest amount of time Abigail spent on homework this week? Again, it's asking you for a week, so that's at least 5 days. So yes, that's a statistical question. So the only one that isn't is the first one. Okay, so hopefully statistical questions make a little bit more sense. You just have to remember that it has to vary. And if it's basically just 1 day, one piece of data, you have to be looking at several days, or you just have to be looking at a lot of data in order for it to be a statistical question. If you're only looking at one, then it's not a statistical question. So hopefully that'll help you with the Think Central part of this.